right, that was an incredible video. My name's Marcus Kennedy. I lead Intel Corporation's gaming and esports segment, which is about as cool of a job as it sounds. And frankly, I'm just happy to be here, looking at all these black faces in tech and in games. Particularly, it's given me some life here on Saturday morning, and I hope it's doing the same for y'all. And welcome to the panel, Black Gamers Matter. I'm going to pass the mic so that everybody can introduce themselves, and we'll hear everybody's name, their position, and what their favorite kind of games to play are. And before I pass the mic, let me answer the question myself. I used to be a former professional video game player in fighting games and in shooting games, so Counter-Strike, Street Fighter, Smash Brothers, that's my jam. Though when I'm by myself, Final Fantasy is what it's all about.
Hi, my name is Jay McBride. I am a manager of programming at San Diego Studios, a division of Sony Interactive Entertainment. We make MLB The Show. And my favorite type of games are open world games. So most recently, Spider-Man, Miles Morales.
It's a good choice. Verta, did we get you fixed yet? Not yet? Okay, let's go to Chris.
Hey everybody, my name is Chris Davis. I am the founder of the Black Gamer League, online networking community for those in the industry. And I am very happy to be here. Some of the games I play, I love fighting games, sports games, and action and adventure. So kind of all around. Give me a game.
Thanks, Chris. Next up is Josh.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Joshua Parker. I am an engineering lead at Riot Games. I work on the game called League of Legends. And my favorite game to play, I'm like Chris, give me all of them. Like, it doesn't really matter to me. I play them all. But like what I'm playing right now, like I'm ODing pretty hard on Destiny 2. Like it sucked me back in and I'm playing like every morning now. It's a problem. It really is a problem.
So it happens when they drop new campaigns, man. It happens every time. Alex.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Alex Francois. I lead competitive operations at Riot Games. Particularly, I work on Valorant esports. As far as favorite games to play, I'm traditionally a console player. I play a lot of sports games, so Madden, NBA, 2K. Play way too much FIFA, and then I also play like a lot of Valorant as well. Sprinkle in some Apex Legends. If Valorant's feeling too intense, I'll play a little Apex, a little bit easier.
Apex is a good choice. And we'll loop back around to Verta. Verta, were we able to fix the technical difficulties?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yes,
Yay!
We got you.
Here I am, repping the Black Girl Magic. My name is Verta. I am one of the co-founders and chief community officers over at The Gamers. And my favorite games are role-playing games. And I'm going to go a little old school. Well, first I'll go new school with Hair Na by Momo Pixels. I love indie games. And Bayonetta, because this woman wears glasses like me while fighting. And I just thought, what? It's raining. She's flipping. She's doing all the things. So those are two that I'm really kind of into. And I do like a couple of first-person shooter games. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. So those are good choices. I've always wondered how her glasses stay on when she's doing
Exactly. I want to know. I need them. I need whatever she has going on.
So for everybody watching right now, the process for this panel here, we want this to be as interactive and as dialogue friendly as possible, and that includes you all offering your questions. So if you have any questions that you have that might be sparked as we're talking, please enter them into the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can, kind of scattered throughout the conversation. We also have a couple of pre-recorded video questions that we'll go to with students, and I've got some prepared ones that we'll use to fill in the time if y'all don't have any questions as we go. So with that, we'll get us kicked off with the first pre-prepared question I got here, which is, I want everybody to answer this question, because a lot of times people don't really understand the difference between gaming and esports, right? What really is the difference? So just open question to the panel, whoever wants to answer first. What is the difference between gaming and esports, and how do you think that students on this call can help navigate those two and find the most benefit for them, either as gamers or as students trying to enter the industry?
I'll start. I'll start with an analogy, which is I'm into forests lately. And so I think that gaming is like the forest and esports is a tree. So you can think of any forest or a certain plant in that tree. I mean, plant in that forest. Like, so if it's a redwood, if it's the Amazon, whatever you're thinking of. And I think that it's important to know that it is just one branch of this space, right? And that to be in the gaming industry, in my opinion, means to just find the things that you love and have a way for those things to converge in the space. So I think it was said before by the founder of Blacks in Gaming that if you love writing, you can find a way to do that in gaming. You can actually also find a way to do those things in esports. Unfortunately, we hear a lot about just the esports players, but there's a whole host of ways to get involved in esports besides actually being the player. So I'm going to pass it off to someone else who might want to add things.
I would add that esports uses the product that the game industry developed. So, in gaming, you are making the games that are being played within esports. And in esports, you're celebrating those games that have been made by playing them competitively. So it's all about, do you want to be using the finished product or do you want to be creating that product? Two different ends of the spectrum.
That's a good one, Jay. Go
And
ahead,
also,
Josh.
I would add too is like when we speak to the space of like product that you're like creating, right? So that like Jay said, that a game studio or someone working in the game industry is going to be delivering the product, which is the game. But then also esports, right? There is I play the game, but then there's also I produce the thing that is the game, right? I produce the broadcast. I'm the coach of the team. I'm the marketer for like the brand that wants to be the commercial in between matches, right? Like, so there is a product or a production that happens around esports as well, that you can be a part of too. So you may not even be a player within that space. You may be, I'm a coach of a team. I'm a psychologist for a team. I lead the broadcast. I'm a shoutcaster. I am a camera person. Many different things in that space. I can even be, I'm an engineer who develops code that is used in a broadcast software, right? Like that even exists. So both things deliver a product, but the products are just different. One is interactive and one is viewed.
That's such a great point. I think a lot of times people think gaming or esports and they only think the gamer themselves. Just like when you think about the NBA, you only think about, the LeBrons and the, Kobe's of the world, right? It's not just about who can pick up the ball. It's also about who's bringing that broadcast into your show, who's coaching them up, who's putting the products together to make it, who made the hardwood floor, who made the ball that they're playing with. All of those things go into making the ultimate end product there. And for anybody watching, there are places for you on any of those spots that you might be interested in joining, whether it's engineering or broadcasting, shoutcasting, skill sets, coaching, or playing, as the case may be. And to that point, I'm going to ask the next question that we got in from the Q&A in the chat, which is, what is the most important skill in your career, given that there are so many ways to get involved in gaming and esports? Talk a little bit about the skill that is most important to you and what you do.
I'll start with that. I think really one of the most important skills that you find in the sports industry in general, going into esports, is that communication factor. Whatever form of communication that you're proficient at, I think that really can excel with whether how far you're going to get in the door or create your own door. You need to be able to make sure that the direction that you're going and that you can articulate it, because oftentimes, like to piggyback off what everyone's kind of said already, esports and gaming, it's one big tree. I love that, Verda. And there's so many branches, but if you can't understand or articulate kind of where you want to go in that branch, you're going to, kind of hold yourself back. So I think communication is a definitely, factor that plays into everyone's success.
The skills that I'm going to talk about in my career. So I'm a co-founder. I'm a Black unicorn out here in this space. And so being a woman and being a founder of a company means that I have to be willing to take up space it's a skill, actually. I think that, and especially because, we are this Black we're in this black space. So we really need to talk about that, right? So go in there and take up space, but don't take up space if you don't know your stuff. I'll use the PG version of what I might say. And so really just honing your craft. So I'm also the chief community officer, and that means that I actually have to really enjoy people. I have to want to engage with people, and I do a lot of things around just what you might see as a community manager type role, what you might see as a communications role in the space. And so if that's something that is your jam, and when I was in college, I was the president of the Black Student Alliance on my campus. I was really into activism things, and those skills that I learned then around organizing, around listening to people, around understanding that any community, even if it's in one particular game, is still diverse. Just because everybody plays Fortnite and they're in your community doesn't mean that they're all the same type of people. So those are the skills that I have been honing my whole entire life that then situated me to be able to do what I'm doing right now. And then I think that whatever you love and whatever you want to, and be open to learning new things. That's really important. And I think that those would be the things that I would say about skills for particularly what I'm doing right now in this space.
I love that so much. The point you're making about diversity of experience and bringing that to bear is so critical. And so for me, I'll answer this question, then we're going to hit everybody else because I want everybody to answer this since we're all so different. For me, the skill is adaptability for that exact reason. I've had so many different jobs, and we'll talk about our career paths later, that the ability to switch and make those pivots while adding on your skill sets is really, for me, the biggest skill. For me, it wasn't about going deep; it was about going broad and adding in all the skill sets to that. It's kind of like an RPG, right? You got to get everything, and I'm the guy who likes to fill out the skill tree, right? And so that's how I treat my career. It's like I treat my RPGs. Alex, I think you were going to go next.
Yeah, thank you. So I completely agree with everything everyone else said. For me, the ability to kind of force yourself to be proactive is really huge, especially in my field and what I do. Just for a bit of context, I'm responsible for kind of creating the rules and policies that govern our sport, and then just handling the operation of the sport. And in the past, a lot of the places that I've worked, we had this phrase where we were like, our job is to put out fires when we can't really plan ahead. When crazy things happen, we just have to be prepared to put out fires. And my approach is that if we're looking to put out fires, we're kind of failing at our job. Our approach should be to look for flammable things at all times, never get complacent, look for things that can go wrong. Marcus, you mentioned that, part of the basketball industry is like building the hardwood floor. In my perspective, that's what we're doing, and we kind of want to always test that floor, see how it could go wrong. Just pay attention to other issues that have happened, and just be proactive and try to solve problems before they start. And then the second thing, just really quickly, is having conviction in your beliefs and your stance, and being able to have resolve. Another big part of what we do is we're in charge of rules and penalties. And when you're issuing penalties, there can be a lot of outside noise. Opinions are easy, decisions are hard. We try to make sure that we set our penalties ahead of time when things are quiet. That way, in the moment when things pop off, we're not being affected to issue a stricter penalty or a lighter penalty based on the noise. You do that ahead of time. That way, you don't have to think and be influenced when something actually happens down the road.
Yeah, so as a gameplay engineer, my entire career I've been in the game industry for over 10 years, and now engineering lead. So there's obviously the things like hard skills, right? So hard skills, like your ability to do the job, right? So are you a good programmer? Are you a good artist? Are you a good speaker? Are you a good whatever, right? Are you a good lawyer or accountant? Like all those things. But as a gameplay engineer, the thing I focus on most past those hard skills is your soft skills, and specifically one, which is collaboration. And collaboration to the tune of what is your ability to be able to speak the language of another discipline, right? So designers talking designer speak, lawyers talking lawyer speak, artists talking artist speak, engineers talking engineering speak. The key for collaboration is how can you cross that bridge to be able to speak something to another discipline so that way they understand your perspective, right? And if you can do that, then you can collaborate as a team, and that collaboration is more rich. Right, that means that the product you provide is more rich, right? Like if you have a bunch of programmers making a game, the game is not going to be as pretty as what it would be as if you have a programmer and an artist, right? If you have a bunch of artists making a game, the game is probably going to be really pretty, but it might not run as well as it possibly could because the game is going to be way too pretty, right? So there's a balance there, right? That everybody is striking. If there's no there's no marketer there, then nobody even knows about the game. But if all these groups can't talk to each other, then the game is less valuable as what it possibly could be. So collaboration is the skill that I think is one of the top ones to have.
I love that. A game like Valorant wouldn't have as many female characters as it has if you didn't have a bunch of female developers in the room, right? Street Fighter 2 only had one female character when it started, just to give you a sense of the the two. Chun-Li till I die. Go ahead, Jay. You're next.
I would say problem solving for me. Most people think as a programmer, you're sitting down and you're typing all day long. I would say about 80% of my job was actually figuring out what it is that I need to do. And the last 20% of that is writing the code to do it. So, and that has extended all the way from being an individual contributor programming to now, managing engineers that are programming. You just end up solving problems at a larger scale.
That's good. Thank you, Jay. So hopefully that gave everybody kind of a sense of the diversity in the industry, but also diversity on this panel as well. That was a really good question. Thanks for asking it. So we're going to go to our first video question. So take it to the booth.
Good morning, I'm Imani Daniels. I'm a junior at Kennesaw State University and I major in cybersecurity. My question for you is, what achievements and goals does Riot hope to accomplish with their Black Gamers Matter movement?
All right, my Riot folks, and by the way, that's a direct question to you folks, but anybody outside of Riot, even if we've got diversity programs, you feel free to answer it as well. So Riot first.
Okay, so I have the answer that I talked to people internally about, and I have my answer. So we're going to start with my answer. We're going to flavor.
Let's get real.
So the reason why Black Gamers Matter and why we're doing this is because I've been in the game industry for a long time, and normally I'm the only Black person at the studio, and I'm tired of being the only Black person at the studio. I want to have more Black people with me, and not just Riot is crazy because Riot has we have over 100 Black people at the studio, which is an insane number in general. But still, sometimes I'm the only Black person in the room when I go into a meeting, and I don't want to be the only Black person in the room on my team. But the key thing that we're trying to do with this is that most people can't do something that they don't see, right? So if they don't see it, they don't know it's a thing to be done. And what this is about is exposing and shining light on that this industry is here. And not only is it here, but you provide value that is beyond something that you may understand, right? Like diversity and inclusion is an important thing that is happening right now. Authenticity is an important thing that is happening right now. And who better to tell your story than you, right? So if you're a Black person, only Black people can tell Black people stories, right? Just like only women can tell women's stories, right? Like that, someone can try, but they're not going to be able to hit the same level of authenticity as someone who's been through and has lived it. And having that aspect, having this movement, we want to show that, hey, we want you here. We want you in this industry. You belong here. We want you to be here. We want you to deliver value that you can.
Yeah, huge plus one. I think not only is it kind of setting an example of what Black professionals do and setting an example for aspiring Black professionals, I think we're also setting an example for other publishers as well. I think Riot, we try to lead the way across a few different spectrums. And I think the work that we're doing in this space should hopefully kind of make it a call to action for other publishers to take a look at themselves and see, how many Black voices do we have in the room? What's our representation in the Black community? If Riot Games is doing this, that means, we're going to get left behind if we're not doing the same type of thing. So I think a lot of it's setting examples on an individual level, but hopefully setting examples on an industry level as well.
Yeah, that's really good. And from speaking from an Intel point of view, right? So first, I'm wearing a Black Girls Code shirt from Nesby, and we as a company sponsor spaces like that out in the industry. We take advantage of our position as kind of an industry steward of the PC platform to go do stuff like that. But we're a tech company. And for those of you who know what that means relative to us, and we publish these numbers, we are 3% Black in our company globally, 3%. And then if I translate that to gaming, and in my group, it's closer to 20%, but that's a deliberate choice that I've made. And to the point that was just made, Josh and Alex both, I feel like it's our responsibility then to kind of put forth those voices and those faces while we raise those up internally, so that folks externally can see what that looks like. And that's why you have this panel full of Black faces on here talking about this, so that you can see what it takes. Does anybody want to comment before we go to the next question? No? Okay, so we'll hit the next question. Verda, this one's especially for you. As a woman in the industry, what are your recommendations for women who want to enter into the gaming industry?
Woo. So one, take a deep breath and shoot your shot. So what they said in the opening for this is find people on LinkedIn, go into Discord servers that you of people and communities that you love, and literally just send messages. That's the first thing, right? I think the other thing that came up, I think it was Angela in the video that talked about imposter syndrome, and that, as women, we have that a lot because we don't see ourselves, right? I think it was Joshua that just said, like, if you don't see yourself, how can you imagine yourself there? So you have to know that we are here. We make up like half the earth. Like, it's not really that diverse to have a woman in the room, but in this space, it feels like it, right? Even right now. And so know that you are needed in the space, know that you have value in the space, right? You just have to kind of claim that. And I think it's finding other women that you can talk to, and that will serve as mentors. Like, I'm totally out there and open to that, and working with like a lot of young people and young Black women very specifically, about what it means to just like take up that space and know that you can do this. I think the other thing, and we all talked about it already, is understanding that there are so many roles within the gaming industry that you might be able to create a job that we don't even know exists yet, quite honestly, at this point, right? Like, is where we are. So just actually know that that is possible. And one of the things I wish that I had heard when I was younger, because I feel like I'm doing it now, all the things that you really love, you can actually make a life out of that. You really can. You just have to actually just like stay with the things you love, right? And not be discouraged. So those are a couple of things that I would say. And when I say reach out to women, I think you should also reach out to men, right? Find men who are actually in the space and that will talk about you in rooms that you are not in, because that's also what it's going to take, right? Find true co-liberators, as I like to say, in this work of making sure that women are represented in the space. So that's what I would say.
Excellent answer, Verda. And the point you were making there at the end about, advocacy is super critical to any career. It doesn't matter whether you're in gaming or anywhere, especially as a minority entering the industry. And we'll ask some really tough questions about what it's like being Black in a white space a little later. But first, a little bit more of a softball question before we get too deep into that. And it's, what brought you into the gaming industry? How long do you plan to stay? What impact do you plan to make? And if you could add a little bit about the educational component and what kind of education you have, because we've got a couple of questions on chat about what it takes and what skills you need. So if you could add that into your answer too. So let's go first.
I guess I'll start. So what brought me into the game industry? How long do I plan to stay, and what impact, what education do I have? So I'll start with the education piece. I have a computer science major. I'm a bachelor of computer science. So I went to college basically. What brought me into the game industry? Boredom. Boredom brought me into the game industry. So I played video games my entire life, and I graduated college, and for some reason it didn't connect with me that I should go and make video games. Like, it was just like, I need to go just get a job because I got to pay off these student loans. I got to go get a job, right? So like, I go get a job. I'm working at a company making software in a room, and I'm so bored. Like, I'm insanely bored. And I remember one day I was like, man, programming is just not something that I want to do. I think I'm gonna go back to school to be a doctor. And I was actually looking at medical schools, and I was watching MTV, and I saw this documentary about the making of Gears of War. And it showed like it was a couple of people that worked at the studio. They went to go get ice cream at some place. And the place is like right around the corner from my house in North Carolina when I lived there. And I was like, wait, oh, people make video games? And I go, oh. And then like from there, I started like buying books. And I started reading about it, and I was like, oh, these are all things that I already know. Like, I'm already here. So then I started applying and trying to get into it from that space. It's like, once I was in, I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is the thing that I've always wanted to do. I just didn't know it yet. So even for somebody who is smart, it took me a long time to figure out like kind of the path that I wanted to go down. So how long do I plan to stay? Forever, because there isn't really another industry that allows me to be creative, allows me to apply my craft. There's not another industry that allows me to be to have the impact that I want to have on the world. Like games have been a very important part of my life since I was a little kid, and being able to create something that can be an important part of somebody else's life, someone other kid's life, and also can bring families together. Like especially now with COVID, right? People are playing games together. People are just, it's a real strong medium to be able to get people through this space that we're going through right now. So being a part of that, I don't see another industry being able to provide that thing to me. So it's here till I die.
Josh, thanks. Chris, go for it.
Yeah, so my education, I love this question because I can kind of get into why I feel like I'm here. My education started at Livingstone College, a historically Black institution in Salisbury, North Carolina. I got my English degree, and then I went and got my master's degree in sport management. And luckily, I was able to come back to my alma mater, Livingstone, and start teaching sport management to my students. So obviously, just like everyone else here, I've been a gamer since I can remember. Started with the specifically my one of my fondest memories is the Super Nintendo. I got the Super Nintendo with the Donkey Kong Country package attached. That was my favorite. That was my favorite. But once I got back to Livingstone, I was teaching about the sports industry, and obviously I brought attention to esports, and I realized how many kids I were teaching had no idea what esports was when they all gamed. They just felt like gaming is gaming. They had no clue that they could make any type of profession out of it, let alone not just playing the game, but as we've been talking about, all the different directions they could take it. So as I'm teaching them about it, I was just like, man, I'm still a young cat. I love gaming. I'm telling y'all can go into the gaming industry. So I had an idea. I was like, okay, well, I want to go into it myself, starting with Force Management Group, my management company for gamers. And then a little while later, I made the Black Gamer League. And that was just to connect, as many Black professionals in the industry as possible, because I realized that my students, not only they didn't know about esports, but they didn't see, other people in the industry. So I was like, we can't go into something that one, we don't see or we don't know about. So I kind of made that my mission. So, everyone else here, I love it because everyone is in the industry. They have, these great jobs, but I had to make my own seat at the table. And I think that's done a lot for me because I can tell my students, as we've been saying, esports and gaming is such a wide, it's an ocean right now of opportunity. So I'm telling them and I'm trying to show them that, if you have an idea, if you have a passion, you can really go forward and make your own seat at the table or your own table. So that's how I got here.
Good one, Chris. Alex, I think you were going to chime in next.
Yeah, for sure. So as far as education, I went to St. John's University Law School. And while I was in law school, I got an internship at the NFL in the legal department, mostly working on interactions with the players union. So a lot of contract disputes and things like that. After a few years of working in that group, I moved over to football operations, where my role was basically owning our rule book, updating our rules, kind of directing the way that the game would evolve over time. And it was great. It was fun. I love football, but we moved so slow. If we wanted to pass a rule, we knew our strategy was get this rule in front of ownership now, wait a couple of years for them to get comfortable, and then maybe we can pass it a few years down the road. And then the opportunity to come into esports opened up. And I realized that esports is just such a blank slate that if you want to make a change, you can pretty much do it instantly. And this opportunity with Valorant is to literally build a sport from the ground up. So the impact I want to have and how long I want to be in this industry, we set pretty lofty goals. We want Valorant to be one of the biggest sports in the world, and that's just not esports. That's just sports in general. And the larger the sport grows, the broader it is, the more opportunities it creates. Getting into sports is a path to prosperity that you don't really have in a lot of communities. So my goal and the impact I want to have is to really just make this one of the biggest sports out there that just opens up doors for as many people as possible.
Good, thanks. Jay, Verda.
Yeah, I'll hop in. My background actually isn't in gaming or esports, right? So I went to college. I went to James Madison University undergrad, and I majored in communications and middle school education. So I became a teacher like right out, and I also became a principal in the South Bronx, Bronx Arts, if anybody's out there repping, an arts elementary school. And I think that actually the arts has always been a part of my life, and that's a way of communicating and telling stories. And I think that gaming is very similar to that. So that's kind of a way that the two come together. And why I am in the space is because as we were founding the gamers, it's me. I have three white co-founders with me, and one of the things that I said when we came together a little bit over like maybe a year and a half, almost going on 2 years now, to talk about creating our company, I said, okay, as long as we're not going to do what happened during the suffragist movement when white women decided that women should be free, but not all women, then I'm down. And so our whole entire company is about amplifying and elevating all women. And in order for that to be truly centering women that look like me, non-binary folks comfortable in women-centered spaces, transgender women, cis women, in order for that to really be true, I had to be there. And so that is part of why I've entered. And then gaming kind of came to me. I mean, I'm mad old, so melanin is, black don't crack. So I'm not even going to talk about that because it's more arcades is where I'm going to talk about my first entry into games. But I have two children and they game. They're gamers, and so that was something that really connects me to Keisha. And like doing this is because they need to see we can't get left behind. Why should we be left behind again? And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about this in this space that's fully dominated by at its inception white men, right? And that should not be the case. And so we as Black people, we contribute to culture in these phenomenal, brilliant ways, and people take from our culture. And so you all out there, you are brilliant. You are your superpower, and you need to be in this space blowing it up, because the more diversity that we can have on the and like the inception of these things is the more brilliant it can be. And so I intend to be here forever, because I hope that my legacy will be here even after I have left, right? And I think that that's a lot of what I feel about the panelists. There's a legacy that you all are leaving. Like your footprints are all over this in these dope and brilliant ways. So that's my answer to that question for now.
You're preaching this morning, Verda. Let me send it over to Jay.
So educationally, I did my bachelor's degree in computer science at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and then my master's in computer science at Michigan State. Started off at Microsoft for a couple years, not making video games, but knew that I wanted to move over into that space. And then eventually was given that opportunity. I will go ahead and date myself, unlike Verda. My first console was a ColecoVision, and I actually am in the credits for Gears of War 1, Joshua. So, yeah, it's been a minute for me, and I don't plan on leaving the industry anytime soon. And I feel like we can leave big impacts in this industry. For example, for Kinect and the Kinect camera, my name is on several patents for that from Microsoft, and we changed the way that video games were being played, and we can continue changing the way that video games are being played, and also the way that we're represented in the game. And there are little things that people don't even think about from a technology wise, like that camera didn't work for Black people. I was the tester for dark skin. And as everyone that is probably sitting in this panel realizes, I'm not very dark. So the fact that they thought that I was a good test case for people using this technology, and the fact that they realized that, wait, we need to bring more representation in just to make this work for people, wasn't something that had even considered. And so just by being in the room, we can change the industry.
Oof, there's a lot to unpack in all of what you're hearing right now, and so I appreciate the cues continuing to come in the chat. Y'all are driving this right now. But let me answer the question real quick. Personally, like Jay, I'm gonna date myself, but like Verda, I grew up in the arcades. My dad used to give me $5, drop me off at a putt golf and games, and I'd be there all Saturday because it was the best way to keep me occupied, because we lived in the hood, and we what you can get into if you stick around there on a Saturday, and so he used to drop me off there, and I'd play video games, and I'd have to make those 30 coins those 30 coins last all day. And so I became competitive and became very good at Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat because I had to make that $5 last. So it was born out of necessity for me. Um, and then, but like others that you've heard, I got a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering. I entered not Intel, but Kraft Foods through an Inroads internship. And I grew up in manufacturing before I came over to Intel, in manufacturing also, because they're chip manufacturer, very different than, chips at Kraft, but chips, computer chips. And then kind of grew up in there. I got my MBA thanks to Intel, used that MBA to shift over into the business side as opposed to being in the factories. And I'll tell you, it took a while even then to get into the gaming industry at that point. In fact, while I was going through all of that, one of the benefits of being in manufacturing was it was a different shift. I was on night shifts, which meant I got the back end of the week totally off. And so I was off every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And so I used to use that time to fly to different places and play video games and video game tournaments. And so I started my, my burgeoning professional video game career thanks to my career in manufacturing. And then later, somebody at Intel found out that I did that, looked at my background across business strategy, finance, and stuff that I had done to that point and said, hey, we think you might be good kind of leading this gaming thing, and asked me if I wanted to come do it. And I said, do I? Right. And so I kind of backward landed here. I did not start out looking for a job in the gaming industry, but I am so glad that I'm here now because like Verda and Jay and everybody else that you heard on this conversation talk about our impact, representation matters. And so I plan to leave a legacy here, and I'm planning on leaving anytime soon because it's going to take a while to build. And I want to address one other question from the Q&A about career path. One of the questions was, does your degree have anything to do with your path? And I think you just heard the answer is absolutely not. On this panel, you've got lawyers, you've got computer science engineers, you've got English majors, you've got a teacher, all working in the gaming industry right now, right? In ways that we all, shake your head violently if we all ever would have thought that we would be here, right? And so none of us, I think, entered this space thinking that we would be in the gaming industry where we are today with the degrees that we had. So I would just say to all of you out there, get the degree that interests you, but don't let it limit you. And with that, we'll go to our next video question.
Hello, my name is Sydney Miles Light. I am a third-year computer science major attending Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. And my question today is, seeing as how video games become a growing professional industry, my question is, are there any growing disparity regarding racial biases within the video game industry? And if so, are there any identifiable means or ways as we can break down those barriers so that way not only African Americans can feel safe, but also anyone of any racial background can be safe from all harmful prejudices?
So thanks for that question. This is going to get into the meaty part of our conversation, so I wanted to kick us off here. What biases exist and what can we do about them in this space? So open to the panel.
I think I'll kick this one off. This is kind of speaking to something that Verda began to kind of talk about in her previous answer. The thing I say all the time is that video games are mostly made by 30-year-old white dudes. So that's the reason why most of the heroes in video games are normally like 30-year-old white dudes, because they make the thing that they are in the game, right? So it makes a bunch of sense that happens. And also when they try to translate that, that's how it can be kind of miscued in an odd way where there's a weird perspective on a particular group. So as far as like racial barriers. So if you think about that space where it's mostly 30-year-old white dudes kind of making video games, if you're a black person within that space, most of the time you have to conform to a set of rules that are already there ahead of you, or if you choose to be yourself, then you become the outlier, right? There's a book called The Loudest Duck, right? So in this space, like if you're being yourself, then maybe you get coined as being the angry black woman or the angry black dude because you're passionate, right? Just because you're passionate about your thing, someone else does that, they're passionate, but you do it, you're mad. But that's not it. We're both just passionate, right? So I think one of the biggest things to kind of like figure out or to deal with within this space is to focus on how do we, as a people, like how do we when you're in this space, how do you walk into this space and take up space like Verda said, but then how do you also educate the people around you in who you are, right? Because like one of my managers, he told me straight up, especially last summer, he said, Josh, I've never managed a Black person before in my life. I have no clue. I have no clue. So I'm going to tell you up front that I'm probably going to make some mistakes in this space. But I want you to hold me accountable to those mistakes and let me know about those things. That particular conversation, I was down to be his report for. I was in there. I was like, cool. This white man is telling me I'm going to make mistakes, but I know that you have value and you're going to teach me something, and I'm willing to be taught. And that space, and that comes from me being loud, like me being loud in this space and talking about like, hey, I don't want to be the only Black person in the room. Hey, like we need to have a Black person's opinion on this particular character because the person is Black. So we probably should have a Black person in the room talking about it. And that being loud and taking up that space allows people to understand that, but not being like brutish about it, but being like open and direct. But people know that it's okay that you don't know, but be willing to be open to understand and learn.
Yeah, I think that it's important to know that the biases that exist outside of gaming are the same biases that will show up within the space, right? So we're not operating outside of the world. And so just know that that is there, and that if we're talking about bias, that we all have them. And the thing is about what friction do you create once it pops up, and what do you do about it? So that example of a white supervisor saying, hey, this is my situation, I'm going to tell me when I mess up, is really important. I think that I'm sitting at all these intersections right now, right? We're like at the end of Black History Month. We're going into Women's History Month, and here I am, a Black woman. And so I think the other thing that can't be denied is that people don't think that women game. And literally, I was on a call with somebody, and they were saying to me, well, statistically, I think it's about at least half of gamers right now identify as women. And this man said to me, well, I don't believe that because the game I play, I don't see a lot of women there. And I'm kind of like, nah, well, you might want to, you're not really sure of that, number one. And number two, the things that women do, one, to not play, right? So I said what my favorite games are. Sometimes I just don't want to hear what is going to happen if I am listening to how people are showing up. There's a bias there about women, about objectifying women, about that if you are a woman that games, that there's certain things about you. And so that's one of the biases that I think is really important to put out into the space, that is something that feels hard. That said, I'll go back to before about finding the people who are your advocates, finding people who are aligned with the way that you think, because there are more good than evil. In my opinion, it's just that they get all the attention, right, when it comes to these biased things. And so I just want to say that one of the ways that it shows up for all of the girls out there wanting to get in, that there are some biases around it. What I would say right now is if you have any leagues on campus, if you have a club on campus for gaming, if there are professors that are in, I would say, computer science or in sports management, go to those people and talk about your interests and the things that you want to do, because that's one way to overcome that bias. One way that biases are disputed is by being in the space. So when you see more of us, then you can't be as biased about the ways that you think that Black people move in gaming.
So I want to hit one thing that you said, and I love that you called it out. There's 2.3 billion gamers in the world right now. Almost a quarter of the population are gamers, and 55% of them are women. So it's absolutely predominantly women. Very different from the stereotypical myth that you think about when you think about gamers. So love that you called that out, Verda. Well, let me ask a separate but related question to the panel. How have you navigated working in a predominantly white space, given what we were just talking about? And what are some of the challenges you've had to overcome in that space?
I was going to say, basically, one of the biases, and this question goes hand in hand in seriously. So one of the biases is that Black people don't necessarily have the same knowledge as other groups, or that we play, the most common one is that we play the same games, the sports related games or things like that. And I think that's a problem / effort that we had to put into, basically show our stuff. Black people were typically always in the position to have to prove that we are who we say we are. And that goes in any industry, but especially in the industry like gaming, they don't think that we have the same knowledge or that we have the same experiences. And then if we do have the same knowledge or experiences, that we don't compete or we're not the same level or we haven't done, made significant changes within our space. So I think, to help all that, it goes back to us not having that imposter syndrome, having the confidence in what we do, who we know, what we've done in this industry, and just trying to be as effective as we can.
Good one, Chris. Jay?
I would say one of the challenges is getting people that are not Black to realize that you are not the full representation of the race. And one of the best ways to overcome that is simply by having more of us in the room. If there's multiple Black people in a room or in a meeting and they can see, disparity within answers and thinking and even simple things like the way we speak and talk, it immediately shines light on the fact that that one Black person that works at the company or is working in the group is the voice of everyone.
That's such a really important point, Jay. Raise your hand real quick on the panel if you've been the only in a room in your job. Yep. Which can be a harsh reality if you come out of an HBCU in particular, when you come out into the world. So the Florida State University School of Engineering is actually joint with FAMU, right? And so I don't claim that I went to an HBCU, but most of my classmates were, and so most of my experience in engineering was almost nothing but Black folk. It was the exact opposite of what I ran into when I came into the working world, and it was certainly a culture shock and something that you have to, kind of shift to and adapt to. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead,
Verda,
then Alex.
The thing that I was going to say around the challenges of working in predominantly white spaces is also that you're not crazy. So there are moments where you're going to experience things and people are going to try to convince you that that is not what just happened. They're going to try to gaslight you. And yes, that is what happened, right? So I think it's being able to, you need to have a support system around yourself outside of that work. So if you are going to be working in a space that is predominantly white, which you may, in fact, if you decide to go into the gaming industry, you need to have a circle of people around you outside of that space. So whether it's, the Black Gamers League, big, all of these spaces, be in company with other Black people that are doing similar things or just have similar experiences to share with you, because that's actually how I survive. Because I have been so many throughout my whole career from, I was a leadership coach, I was a principal, I was, right now being a founder, there's so many, I'm usually always if we're in VC meetings trying to get investors to contribute to our company, I am 97% of the time the only Black person. And I'm not the only woman because thankfully I have 3 dope women co-founders, but oftentimes the only Black person there. And so there's sometimes where things are said and then you have to stand up for yourself, right? Know your stuff and then stand up for yourself and decide that you don't have to go and work in places where they are not going to allow you to be your authentic self, or where there is, I'm not going to call it bias, I'm going to call it outward racism, because there's a difference between how those two things show up. You don't have to take that. And that's something that I didn't realize. One, there was a lot of sexual harassment that I experienced early in my career, and not in the gaming industry per se, but it has to be named that I experienced that. And then a lot of racial violence, I'll call it. And I kind of thought I had to just suck it up. And so I didn't tell people a lot, and I didn't have this circle of other people that I could go to. And being a third culture kid, first generation American, my mom and my dad weren't trying to hear that. They were go to school, go to your job, and don't, just do it, right? And so we get that message. And I think you all are growing up in a really, really beautiful time where I did not have the internet, the World Wide Web, whatever, the information highway, all y'all know the names that they called it before it was what it was. What didn't exist. So I didn't have connections across state lines and across the globe like you do. Lean into that. It's a beautiful, beautiful collection of support that you have. So those are just some of the ways that I'm going to add to that. Sorry. Go ahead, Alex. Oh, sorry. I'm all like moderating now. Sorry.
You
Hey,
got it.
feel free.
Yeah, so I think the challenges are basically like threefold. I think as Black folks, we have fewer connections, we have less margin for error, and we have a greater responsibility. And it kind of hits on every step of your career. So having fewer connections, just because of the fact that our country is built on kind of a racist framework, we just have fewer folks that look like us that are in positions of power, which makes it a lot harder to get in the door. So those fewer connections, they hurt you at the beginning of your career because it's so much harder to get in the door. And then once you get in the door, there's just less margin for error. Folks that don't look like you may be inclined to have a little bit less patience with your mistakes. And additionally, as you kind of climb through the ladder, that margin for error changes a bit. Like if you make a mistake or you're not on top of your game, people might think, why is he here? Like, is he actually here on merit or is he here on some type of quota? And then second, that responsibility, like, work is hard sometimes. Just like you could be grinding 50, 60 hours a week and you're kind of like heads down on your personal professional struggle. But that's just half of it. Like as Black folks in positions of leadership, we have a responsibility to like the other Black folks that are coming after us. So we can't really kind of sulk and keep our heads down when we're being challenged on an individual level because it's so much bigger than us. So I think those three things together, those are challenges that we just kind of have to carry with us. But it is what it is, and I think it makes us all stronger.
I love what you just said, Alex, and it ties to something Verta said around what being the minority really means. And sometimes you get the outright racism, but a lot of that doesn't. Some of it exists. I'm not gonna BS you here on this call. If you're here, we're keeping it real, right? But for the most part, it's more subtle. You're not gonna have people coming in wearing a red hat or a white hood talking directly at you, putting their fist in your face in the room. What you're going to have is everybody looking, business casual, but still making the same kind of decisions. I'll give you a quick story that happened to me directly. I had applied for a job. I was super qualified for it. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. The job was about process efficiency. And so I had all the right experience. I had all the right certifications to get the job. Went to the interview, crushed the interview, didn't get the job. And when I asked for the feedback, they brought me back into the room, and I was like, "Hey, can you help me understand, what I can do to get better? What happened? Why didn't I get the job?" They said to me, looked me dead in my face, and said, "You answer the questions as though you were too prepared for this job interview, like you were coached." Because of course, there's no way that somebody that looks like you could be that good or have those answers. Right? They didn't say that last part, by the way. But that's what it felt like, right? And like Verta said, I was at a position in my career where I just had to suck it up, right, and try to understand it. It's actually changed the way I approach interviews. I speak very quickly, and so I've changed that in interviews so that I pause now more often in interviews because I got that feedback. But it's because it's not always people wearing white hoods. You just don't get the same kind of assumption of competence that others do, right? And so that's something that you have to battle when you come into an industry where you're the minority. It is that assumption, and that phrase, "You got to be twice as good to get half as much," lives everywhere. And it is a burden that we must carry. But the way you fight that, as you've heard over and over again, is through representation, right? Is you work to build that legacy, you work to change the culture, and you work to change the perspectives. Okay, and so with that, we'll keep it uncomfortable for one more question, and ask a question about George Floyd. So last year there was a bunch of industry reaction to the civil unrest that was kicked off with George Floyd's murder last year, and so I'd like some folks here. We won't hit everybody, but I'd like some folks to talk about how did that affect you, your company, and what is your company or your organization doing to impact or measurable change that has changed since then?
I'll kick this one off. Hopefully my phone doesn't go crazy or my son doesn't randomly walk in here on this. But so last summer was pretty impactful, especially living in LA. Like, it was pretty impactful. So I'm sitting, watching everything happen on TV, as we all were, on the internet, as we all were, and I'm the co-lead for Riot Noir, which is a Black employee resource group at Riot. And I get a text message from Angela, who is the chief diversity officer. Then I get a phone call from Angela. Then I get a phone call from Dylan, who is the president of the company. And now we're on the phone talking about how are we going to respond to this particular thing. How are people feeling? What is Riot going to do outside of internally and also externally to be able to combat or meet this challenge that is happening in the world right now? And it's just a real moment, right? When you're watching this thing happen to your people, a thing that you've seen happen in your entire life, whether it be macro or micro, you've seen it and watching it, other people see it and take note of it. And you're now, and I'm in a position as like a manager to where I'm talking to like the president of the company. He's like, what do you want? What should we say? What should we do? And I'm just like, okay, I gotta think about this. So we get everybody together and we start thinking about what do we want to say, what do we want to do. And the thing that challenge that I brought up to the company and to myself is that we need to be about this, and the Riot stepped up to this. We need to be about the change we want to see in the world, right? We can't just talk about it. We got to do something. We can't just put out a statement that says, hey, we care about Black people, Black Lives Matter, peace, guys, we're with you. And then but that's all we do, right? Like we're like, people don't see us, people don't know anything about us, people haven't heard from us. And then when this dies down, as these things do, then we go back to status quo and we forget about it. And the thing that Riot is doing to put their money where their mouth is like, one, we're doing the partnership with FAMU, and we're working on like helping them grow their computer science program to be able to deliver high quality candidates to the game industry, and also the Earth program. And the Earth program is like super near and dear to my heart. Like I love it. It's like going out and working with underrepresented founders, and really giving them a leg up and in their approach to being a part of this industry. And that is what it takes to really be see change that you want to see, right? It's to plant that seed, because I don't think Black people don't need handouts, right? Like we're smart enough and intelligent enough and capable enough to be able to do this. We just need to have the door opened, right? We've talked about before, someone in the room that's willing to put us in the room, we can take it the rest of the way. And I think that part is the part that I see Riot doing, and I hope and I want us to continue pushing that thing forward.
It's a good one, Josh. Do I have someone else who wants to comment on this one? How your company has reacted and what you're doing for lasting change? If not, I can comment. Verda, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say that what Josh just said about like be about it, not talk about it, is really how we choose to move as the gamers. And I'm also the founder of another company called 45 Lemons, because the other work that I do in the world is around this very thing. So it's around anti-oppression and anti-racism work. It's what I've been doing for over 20 years, and I call this just the current iteration of the revolution, right? So, and Joshua mentioned this too. We witnessed, right? Everyone else witnessing what we lived and live our entire lives, right? So, because we had COVID-19, everyone was like kind of locked at home, screens were like big time, and they couldn't get away from it, right? You could not leave this moment of, you couldn't go to a bar, you couldn't go to the boardroom and do those things. And so for us, and for me, just as someone moving in the space, it's about, one, connecting with other organizations that are about the work, not just about the statement. And you will know that, right? You have to start looking at who are the people that are on their executive teams. When they come to you and they say, oh my gosh, we want to do an anti-racism plan. I'm like, do you even know what that means? Like, what are you talking about? Like, and I've been in this for so long, like 4 years ago, people was looking at me crazy when I would say if I would say white supremacy culture, they'd be like, oh, no, you can't say that. Literally, I've been told, like, do not say that in a session. So where we are right now is really pivotal, because right now we actually do get to see who has been about this work, at least for a little while before this moment, because you can tell, and who is just trying to do it now, but also who's willing to learn right now and move, and who are they putting in positions to actually take this to the next level. So when I see Black women getting like E-suite roles, right? And Black women start, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, because we've been telling y'all for like a minute. We start to see Black men that have either been behind the scenes or to the left of camera, like now on screen, but have been doing this work forever. So that for us, it's really about being about it. It's not just like being able to put a statement up there. So the things that we are looking for, and I'm going to like do a plug, like go to our LinkedIn. We're looking for, if there are people out there that want to be moderators for us, if there are people out there that actually want to, like we're trying to do a whole chapter program in colleges. So if this this is your jam and you think you want to be, do that, like that's the other thing that we're doing is like lifting other people up in this moment into roles and positions. And then the last thing that I'm going to say is also recognizing that there's healing that needs to happen and not solely relying on Black folks to do the work of this, because it is continually re-traumatizing to have to do that. And I need other people. I need people that are going to stand in front and alongside me that are white to be talking about this. And like, I can't even, right? So I can speak about this from the Black woman's perspective because it was George Floyd. So you all are Black men seeing that. And then behind the shadows are the women that we don't talk about, the Breonna Taylors, the Sandra Bland's. Like we need to, all of that for all of us. So just understand that there's healing that needs to take place. And how you can help heal is pay us what we're worth. Number one. Right? I'm just saying, right? Like, because when you look at salary disparities for what we make in our roles, right? So pay us what we're worth. Number two, don't expect Black people to always be the voice of this campaign for you, right? And number three, be about it. Don't stop statementing about it. Be about it.
I love that. Thanks for bringing that one up, Verda. Go ahead, Alex. You want to chime in?
For sure. So Josh talked to a lot of the great work that he and the other leadership folks at Riot are doing as a company. So I can speak a little bit more as like myself as an individual Riot employee. In my role, I work with a lot of our regional esports teams all around the world. And during the summer, one thing I noticed was I'd get on the phone with someone from Japan or Korea or Berlin, and there would just be this kind of, you could tell that they wanted to talk about this, but you could tell that maybe they probably wanted to talk about this issue in the past and never thought they could. And now they're thinking maybe's the time. And I ended up having a lot of those one-on-one conversations where I basically had to be that bridge. And you could tell it was the first time folks were talking about racism with the Black person, which when you take a step back and you think we're talking about like 30-year-old people, that's kind of crazy. And what was really impactful to me is that I think a lot of folks came into these conversations thinking like, well, Alex, if you're here now, surely the racism you experienced had to be like the kind of subtle stuff that's not that bad. Maybe things are overblown. And that's not the case. Like every Black person on this screen, every Black person watching, we've all dealt with some real racism that I think would shock a lot of people. And having the opportunity to talk to my coworkers and kind of open their eyes up, I know that it had a lasting impact on them as individuals, and I know that that's a domino effect. Now they're walking around with like a new knowledge and a new perspective, and I think that's probably happened all over the country. So it's definitely something I want to acknowledge that, like, yeah, as a company, we've done a lot. We've kind of galvanized our Black community, and like I said, Josh has been a spearhead of that, and that's amazing. And I think even at a more kind of micro level, a lot of folks were able to have these conversations and get themselves educated, honestly.
Yeah, that's real. Just a quick comment on this. Like you said, everybody on the screen has dealt with it. I've had people come up to me and say, "There's no way that you would have gotten the job that you have, not just in this job, but also this job, without the color of your skin. Like you're a diversity hire, that kind of stuff, right? Like directly to my face in this company that I think does a really good job on this diversity stuff. So it's everywhere, and you have to deal with it. But what at least here at Intel, it happened the way you just described, Alex. It gave the opportunity for us to share those experiences and to open up folks' minds, and that sharing of experience, I think really does make a true and lasting change. Somebody asked in the chat already, how do you speak for the Black voice? What do you say? And I think the answer is, well, first, as you've heard earlier, you say, well, I don't speak for everybody, right? I cannot speak for my race. What I can do, though, is speak for myself and share with you my experiences, because of what I've had to deal with as my race. And what you'll find is, for the folks who are asking those questions and leaning into those, you'll find that their eyes starting to open up because they had a bunch of assumptions coming in that you're starting to dispel. And that's how you start changing people's minds. And by changing people's minds is how you change their behavior. And at the end of the day, that's how you drive real lasting and action and change. So with that, we're going to move out of the bashing of the white culture for a moment, but go to a different kind of culture, and that's the crunch culture in video games. So, as I'm sure we all know, crunch is tough to deal with, right? For those who don't know what crunch is, it's, as you approach a deadline of launching a game, everybody just kind of locks in, and sometimes it leads to some very interesting behaviors and environments. And I'll turn to Jay first and help us understand what it's like. How do you handle it, and do you have any thoughts on that culture?
What it's like changes greatly. One thing you understand when you get into this industry is that video games are date driven. And by being date driven, that means you're going to crunch. Once you lock in on a release date, there are catastrophic consequences to missing it for the most part. And you handle it the best that you can. You get to sleep when you can. You know, you make sure you're hydrating, you're eating well, and try not. For me, a key part of it, I think Connect Adventures was my worst crunch. We did 9 months straight, and I was doing 14 to 16-hour days most of the time. And an important part of that to me was making sure I went to work out. So I took an hour or two out of the middle of my day. I would get up, I'd work, go work out in the evening, go back to work until the late hours, sleep a few hours, rinse and repeat. But I think just even those couple of hours every day kept me sane, kept my body healthier, and really helped me push through that crunch.
It's a good one, Jay. Josh, you want to add to that one?
Yeah, yeah, definitely been through my fair share of crunches throughout my Ubisoft days and all of that. What I will say is that crunch is tough. I think there's two aspects of crunch though. One, most things that you do that you have a passion and you want to be great require more of you, right? So like if you want to be if you want to make a really good grade on a midterm or a final, like that's going to take more of you than what the normal time would take to do. And I think the same thing works if you want to make a great piece of art, or you want to make a great video game or whatever. So you're going to put more time in, extra time in, to be able to deliver that thing that you want to deliver at the level you want to deliver it at. I think where crunch becomes bad is that when it's a mismanagement of time, right? So when you mismanage like the scope or the scale of time, so you use crunch to be able as a tool to be able to deliver the thing you want, and that's where crunch can be a bad thing. And I've experienced both. I've experienced crunch as a thing where we galvanized as a team and we delivered something awesome as a group. And I've experienced crunch where nobody did anything for years, and they're like, okay, well, it's 6 months for the game shift. We're just gonna go hard. We're gonna go 70-hour weeks because it's what we do. And I think that portion of it is the portion that hurts, right? And it can burn people out. And so what Jay is talking about is like avoiding burnout is like the key aspect there, right? Is that you have to find ways to be able to avoid that space. And also you have to be able to ask questions once it's done and say, how do we not get back to this space again? How can we make this not as bad the next time around? What mistakes were made to get there? Because there probably were some. Maybe we could have planned better here, planned better there. We're never going to do it perfect, and it's never going to be completely gone. But how can we be better the next time? So we don't just use this as our go-to tool. Up, game's late. Let's go 70-hour weeks. Let's do it. Like it's time. Like that. That is not like a tool that we should use, because data proves that once people go past a certain amount of hours, they begin to actually detract in the amount of quality of work that they provide, right? So if we know that that's true, then we can't use that as a consistent tool. Sometimes in spots it works really well, but not as just like this is the norm for the industry. This is the norm for how we do stuff.
And thanks for sharing you guys' experience on how you deal with it and what you're trying to do to change the culture overall. So thanks for that. And with that, we'll go to the next video question.
Greetings, my name is Miles Armstrong, a first-year business administration freshman from Florida A&M University. My question to the Black Gamers Matter board is, as African Americans pertaining to the gaming community, what competition and struggle do you face while building your career? Also, how do these experiences help build the essential skills needed for your area of expertise?
It's a good question. Who wants to take it first?
I will. So I really think all of our experiences are definitely unique, but that also adds a little flavor to who you become as a person in the industry. All of us have gone through different things, ranging from similar activities, but beyond the scope of just kind of going through those gatekeeper moments, or once you do get into your right place, feeling as though you're welcome there and you're supposed to be there. I think it's this experiences that make you who you are. Unfortunately, that comes with negative experiences as well as positive experiences. So if you just kind of take everything for what it is and try to grow from that, I think you learn as you go how to handle the next situation, how to place yourself in a better place to succeed in an industry that can throw so many different things at you. A lot of curveballs will come at you that you may not have been ready for, but the negatives and the positives can for sure help you, get past the next.
That's good, Chris. Thanks for that. Go ahead, Verda.
What I'll add to that is I think that for me, as a Black girl who was Black when there wasn't even a term called Black girl magic, right? And so growing up not seeing myself represented was a challenge. And right now, where I sit, I see that who I am and who each of you are uniquely is what makes you special. And so I feel like I'm divinely built for this moment because I am a Black woman and I am able to use all of the things that I have amassed and the challenges to actually try to pave a different way for those that are going to come after me. And so I'm just going to name that. I think that right now, anything that feels like a challenge right now, lean into it, learn more about it, talk to people about it. I've been in rooms where I was the only Black person talking to a bunch of white people about white supremacy culture and leaning into how uncomfortable that was, but how that conversation actually took us to another place where I could have different conversations with them. So I'm not sure if I answered your question entirely, but I think that my point here is using those challenges as an opportunity to grow to the next level. And I think right now, if I had heard just some of the things that I'm like talking to like younger Verda at times, if I had heard these a little earlier, I might have been able to lean into that in a different way.
Yeah, I love that, Verda. Using the challenges that you're presented to grow your own skills and grow your perspective so that you can push through the next one. That's so important, not just for us, but just period. So that was really good, Verda. Thank you. Here's another question. We've got a bunch of questions from the chat about, hey, I've got a lot of kind of desires on how to enter the industry, whether it's as a designer or an artist or a streamer or anything like that. Can you, those of you who are in that space, we'll take one quick answer on this one. How do they get into it, and how would you advise somebody trying to enter in that way into the industry?
The first thing I would say is start. That's the first thing I would say is just start doing it. There's a lot of like, oh, okay, well, I got to get the right setup. I got to get this camera. I got to get this mic. I got to get this thing. And after this, I got to learn this software. No, just start. Get a camera that works, whatever webcam you have, just start. Because once you start, then things will begin moving forward for you. Versus if you feel like I have to learn all this stuff first, I got to do it, and I got to talk to 10 people, and I got to make sure like the stars align. Like, no, just do it. Just start doing it, because you're not going to be good at it when you begin it. Like you're not going to be as good as someone who has been streaming for last 10 years, who's got like 5 or 6 people on their team behind them doing all their marketing stuff. You're not going to be that good at the beginning. So don't worry about that part, right? Like I do podcasts, right? My podcast is not as good or well produced as this podcast is. It's okay. It will be one day. It's not today. But the point is that I'm starting it. The point is that I'm doing it, and it will eventually get there as I keep working on it.
Thanks for that answer, Josh. Somebody on my team, his name's Khalif Adams. We actually just did a Twitch stream yesterday, and he'll be on a panel later on today if you're on this if you stick around for that conference. So if you have any questions and you want to reach out to him directly, you can do so through me, do so to him directly, and reach out to Josh if you've got questions about streaming. I think we're all open to reaching out, so please feel free. With that, we'll go to, I think, the last video question.
Hello, my name is Simon Williams. I'm a senior computer engineering major hailing from Jackson State University. My question for today is, how are different opportunities in esports marketed to African Americans? Thank you.
All right. My marketing folks, what do y'all think?
I honestly feel as though it's not marketed enough to African Americans. I mean, just to kind of start it off, that might be the answer. You don't really typically see it marketed towards African Americans to start. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying in the first place of why I made the Black Gamer League. We don't see enough of what we've been saying all day. We don't see enough representation to know that we can even go into this, this area. So I think that's a problem in itself. But I think it unfortunately is a problem that we as Black people that are in the industry, it's up to us to kind of fix, because no one else is going to necessarily put as much emphasis on trying to get more Black faces into these gaming in general than we are. So it takes leaders as that are on the screen and more to provide these opportunities. And I think that's unfortunately just what it is and how it's going to be for a while until other people get on the track.
Yeah, it's definitely. This isn't like Calvin's got a job, right? Like Calvin got a job means going to McDonald's, right? Like this is not marketed towards us like at all. Like so much of it is behind the scenes, and so much of it is just literally just you just don't see yourself in that space. Like one of the numbers that they have in like California is that specifically for computer science, that less than 4% of the graduating seniors in college or for computer science majors are Black. Like less than 4%. So that means like out of like the 400,000 that graduate every year, less than 400 of them are Black, which is like, it means that there's a lot of space to where people are just, it's not even just like the level of I'm in college, but it's also like I'm in elementary school, right? Like I have not even begun the path to even think about getting to this state. So like, it's not just marketing it towards Black people, it's also building the foundation of showing them at a very young age, hey, you can, yeah, there's computer science you can do. Oh, you want to be an artist? Cool. You should go be an artist. Oh, you want to be like a shoutcaster? Oh, we're going to work on some communication stuff. You can learn how to do that. None of like that's not there. Like the kids are growing up and they're not seeing it at all. They're seeing, the classic professions and they're seeing the entertainment professions. They don't see it until later in life. And there's a select few that pick up on it. But we have to start at that level, right? If we're like young kids are like, oh, I want to be a shoutcaster. Oh, I want to be an artist. Oh, I want to be a narrative designer. Oh, I want to be like Alex. I want to go to law school and I want to work in this space within it. Like you have to start at that level, because otherwise, if you get to college, it can kind of be almost too late to really be able to switch somebody around and be able to make them understand, oh, this is a path for me. So yeah, marketing is non-existent, but hopefully we can improve that.
Go ahead.
The only thing I'll say is don't mistake advertising to us with marketing to us. So I think that you might think, oh, but let me look at this ad campaign. I see all of these, oh, wow, that's actually not the same thing. And I think that's what you all are really highlighting there. And I just want to put that out there because some would think that because we see what the advertisements look like that, oh, wow, look at all these Black folks. And that's not the same thing. It's about being really deliberate about peeling back the layers to see what that means. And the only other thing that I'll add here, because I think that for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, you have an opportunity to actually create your own table, as Chris mentioned before. So if you want to make a video game, start now figuring out how that would be, even if you've never done it before. Find the spaces and places that you could do that. Like I said, if you want to stream, just go and I just go and I follow bunches of Black women that stream just because I want to see what they're doing. I want to support them. I want to know them and be in their company. So just do your study and research in that way. But you can start stuff right now. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be something that's like a big company like Riot yet, right? But if you start it now, that's what it can become.
The advertising isn't marketing is so on point. Shouts to the I'm Loving It campaign by McDonald's. It's great to see Black folks on screen. It's better to see Black folks making all that stuff happen. And this is where I think some of the initiatives that Kashia talked about around the HBCU initiatives and what we're doing to kind of stand up at Black colleges, universities, what it looks like and show that representation, and then kind of taking it all the way back, like Josh said, down to the K through 12 and getting kids understanding what it will take. That way, as they grow up, they know what path that they should be on, or at least what paths are available to them to go after this space. So thank you for all of those thoughts. And we've had a lot of great Q&As. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to hit all of the questions in the chat that you offered. I hope we hit most of them as we were kind of talking through, and we'll do everything we can afterwards to kind of collect all of those and get those back to anybody who came. But with that, we're going to close the panel with a series of final thoughts here. Anything that you want the audience to walk away with here at the end. So we'll start with Alex.
Awesome. Well, first, I just want to thank you and everyone else for having me on this panel. It's incredibly honored to be with this group, given this discussion and this talk. As far as closing thoughts, I think we're in a really unique position being in the gaming industry right now. Most industries are old and racial injustice is as old as time, but gaming is an emerging industry, and I think we're uniquely positioned to grow in an inclusive way. And then I think being Black is a gift. The challenges we face, they make us more resilient, they make us more creative, and those things allow us to build skills that make us more well-rounded and impactful as professionals. So, we're obviously going to deal with challenges as we try to navigate through our professional careers, but those challenges, they just end up paying dividends down the road.
Thanks, Alex. Josh?
Yeah, I want to echo you, like, just thanks for being on this panel. This was dope. I love spending time with Black people because Black people are awesome in general. We're smart, we're intelligent. We bring something to our culture is unsurpassed in this world. Everyone is stealing it, trying to take it and use it for their own means. And the thought that I want to leave with is to that point is that I want to see us take back the culture that people have used, right? Like people, like you see hip hop everywhere, you see our style and our fashion everywhere. You see our character style in the game, stories that we want to tell in games, in music, in movies, all over the place. And we're at a point now to where we're beginning to take that back and really build a foundation of authenticity within that space. When you look at things like Black Panther, you look at anything across the board in that space that come out in the last couple of years, we're doing that. So I want everyone here on this panel and everyone watching and listening now or in the future is to be your authentic self and give something back to the culture that you're a part of and that people want to see.
Thank you, Josh. Chris, you're up.
I'm definitely staying on a thank you train because this is amazing. I'm happy to meet everyone here, and I hope the people out there have learned something that they can take with them. And the last thing I really want to say, if anyone knows me, I'm a big proponent on making your own table and starting your own journey. You can't be afraid to do these things because everyone that's done anything worth acknowledging and created history, they had that same thought. They had that same thought of, should I do this? Or how can I do this? But the one difference is they started it. So don't be afraid to start. Even if you don't know anything, you could be the next person that could really make a huge impact in some way, shape, or form. So don't be afraid to start, and you can do anything you need to do.
Thanks, Chris. Jay?
Yeah, thank you everyone for having me and Marcus for hosting and the other panelists. This is going to sound repetitive, but I'm not going to come up with something different because maybe we can just drill it in. And my final thought is do it. If this is what you want to do, do it. Unity is free. Unreal is free. You can literally start making games for free today if you have a computer. And there are lots of YouTube tutorials that are free. So there is nothing stopping you today from making a game if that is something you want to start doing. And I've had people that have interviewed with me that bring their portfolios or individual things that they work on, and showing that level of passion is huge in the hiring process and gives you a one-up, over somebody with a better GPA or somebody that went to quote unquote a better institution and things of that nature. So start today, start this weekend, just get your hands dirty and do it.
Thanks for the repetition, Jay. And Verda?
The only thing that I'm going to add, because they all said it beautifully and brilliantly, obviously this has been amazing to start any moment of the day with just a bunch of Black people in this Blacknificent moment is amazing. So I thank all of you. Your comments have been amazing. What I will say is that you, in fact, are your ancestors' wildest dream. The fact that you are at college, the fact that we are on this panel, because if white supremacy and racism and all those things had it their way, we wouldn't even be alive. So just revel in that always and go out there and do your thing. You are your superpower. No one can do what you do. So I use this analogy a lot. I'm really into analogies. Sneakers exist. Nike makes sneakers, Converse makes sneakers, Reebok. They didn't stop making sneakers because someone else was making sneakers. They just decided, I'm going to make sneakers for this group of people that want these Reeboks. And the same thing is for you. Just because someone else has an idea that may be similar to yours, they cannot do it the way that you do. So just go out there and be you and continue to be your ancestors' wildest dreams.
Thank you, Verda. I'm stealing Blacknificent with pride, by the way. Just snatched. It's mine now. I'm going to trademark it, but it's mine. So the only thing that I'm going to add to everything everybody said, back to something you mentioned earlier, Verda, about imposter syndrome. I want all of y'all to think about what Alex said, that your Blackness is a gift. It provides that resiliency that comes from facing these challenges. Walk through the world with that resiliency, but with the confidence of the majority, and you can change the world. And with that, I just want to say thank you to the panel for doing this. This was great. I hope this was a good way for everybody here to start their day. Thank you for having us, and thank you for joining. And with that, signing off.
Wow. Thank you so much. This is an amazing way to kick off the day. I am speechless, and it takes a lot for me to be speechless. You all absolutely killed it. Blacknificent is going to be our hashtag for the rest of the day, the rest of BCGA, existence. Amazing. Thank you to each and every one of you. You dropped diamonds. I don't even know what jewel is better than diamonds, but all I can say is wow. And from the dialogue in the chat room, the number of conversations, the interaction, we've got people right now from all over the world that have joined us, and they are engaged. They have been asking some amazing questions, and you all hit every single one of them out of the park. So I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. I hope you could stay around for the rest of the day. I appreciate you again to Riot Games for presenting Black Gamers Matter. We appreciate you, and we are so excited about today. So please stay around. We're about to take a break, but before we go to break, we want to thank all of our sponsors. We're going to play some of our amazing corporate partners commercials shortly. I ask that you go to the polls and go into the poll room. Make sure you complete the polls. We're going to be giving away prizes. We'll give our first prize away shortly. Also, go to social media. Please make sure you use, when you're in social media, our hashtags BCC21, BCC, and don't forget to tag our handle BCGA USA across all of our and your social media platforms. Please post pictures. Let us know what you think, because right now the polls are open. We'd like to hear what you thought about the panel. We'd like to know who your favorite panelist was. You can also tell us in the chat room who you're excited, looking forward to hearing from and interacting with later. At the end of the day, we've got some networking meetups and some mini breakout sessions. We'll get a chance to meet some amazing people and have a chance to talk to them in a smaller setting, one-on-one, about what they do, how they do it, why they do it. And then they can help you to figure out and chart your course to continue to be Blacknificent. So now we'll get ready to show a couple of commercials, and then I'll come back over with a few more announcements. And we'll announce a winner.